Surprise, you guys. We have a reshuffle where at the end of last episode, we said that we were going to have Louie and Andy.
Ben walked with Scott Ballou. They had a long talk about all kinds of things. And at the end, we said, Louie Alvarez and Andy Coker visiting New York filmmakers here in Austin.
Yep.
And we're going to talk to them, well, Ben is, but not today.
Correct. Today, because The Long Time is our sponsor, we are moving up our episode with David Modigliani, our mutual friend and fellow doc-filmmaker. He's a playwright, he's a poet, he's on my baseball team, the Texas Playboys.
He's a podcaster like us, but his podcast is very different than ours. But don't worry, you're going to find all about this in our walk. We had a beautiful walk around Mayfield Park.
That's right.
Here in Austin.
Lots of hand gestures, lots of animated conversations. This is a really fun one.
So, thank you to The Long Time. We appreciate your sponsorship, and we're excited to talk today with longtime baseball player and longtime friend.
I see what you did there. I like it.
So we appreciate David, we appreciate you, we appreciate The Long Time, and we appreciate Louie and Andy. Their episode will be coming up in a few weeks. But for now, let's go talk with David Modigliani.
Here on DocWalks.
On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith.
So we are here at Mayfield Park with former Austinite, current Santa Feite?
Yeah, Santa Fean?
Santa Fean, yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah.
David Modigliani, what are you doing back in Austin?
Well, I lived here for 20 years, and we recently moved to Santa Fe to be close to my wife's parents when we had our first bambino. And I am back this weekend because the Home Slice Pizza is bringing back its Carnival of Pizza, which involves competitions of like box folding and dough throwing, and then ends in the pizza eating competition. And I had long emceed that, and I would often show up in character as my buddy Nano's long lost Italian cousin, and they asked me to come back. And
wait,
so
what's this character's name?
David Modigliani.
I love it. You know,
it's a reach.
That sounds strikingly similar to some characters from your podcast, Pack One Bag.
Yes, that's true.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
Before we get any further, I just want to send a quick shout out to longtime pizza eating champion Chris Floyd.
Hey.
He's a personal hero of mine, watching him scarf down pizza after pizza, year after year. He won the Home Slice 5 times, I think you said?
I think he's a 5-time champion.
5-time champion. Someone should make a movie. But here we are, we're in Mayfield Park. This is a little different for us because this is a rocky path.
I was going to say,
I think Ben's got a nice shot of it.
Yeah,
we need to talk about where we are. We normally walk on paved surfaces, so the fact that we are hiking today is a first.
Ooh,
it's a
doc
Walks
hikes.
first.
Doc hikes, yeah.
This doesn't really roll off the tongue the way.
Doc hikes.
While we're throwing some shout outs, I just want to go ahead and acknowledge the t-shirt I'm wearing in support of first-time filmmaker Austin Sayers' upcoming documentary about Steve Fromholz.
Okay.
Austin is a frequent Doc Walks listener. He, like many people right now, is waiting to hear when his film will be premiering at what festival. I threw this shirt on this morning. It was a Kickstarter perk.
Hi.
I don't normally take the perks when I support films because I know that's just a pain for the filmmaker. But this is a pretty good-looking shirt.
Yeah,
it's a good-looking shirt.
You're an ambassador, you know, and you're spreading the word.
I am wondering
if we need
to reconsider this
We're
here.
deep in the wilds of Austin.
There's no way we're going to be able to walk 3 across.
Yeah.
And get our normal shots.
Okay.
Doing this. So
let's give it a little.
No. Here, let's have you guys come on through. Sorry.
Get some B-roll of this path then while we're walking.
What's the liability waiver situation on Doc Walks? I'm sure you guys have a robust policy.
How did Keith blow his knee out?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, this is like this is kind of apropos. This is like Santa Fe.
This is very Santa Fe. Yes, it's true. We live right near some trails, and I take the guy in the backpack.
Just any guy or a specific guy?
Oh no, my little guy, my little boy, Marcello. Yes, he's 16 months. Should we look at this map?
A map. Look at this guy.
Just to help us. We are where?
So we are at Mayfield Park. We're back off the beaten path and onto the unbeaten path. No,
No.
What's the opposite of
the
the
opposite?
We were on the unbeaten path.
Correct.
And now we're on just the gravel path.
We were on the road less traveled, but now
Good fences make good neighbors.
empty wagons make the most noise.
I mean, is that a Robert Frost poem? I was just trying to keep it frosty.
Two passed a virgin a wood,
There you go.
and we took the Modigliani.
Okay. Oh, I like that. I wasn't expecting that.
This is beautiful.
Very pretty.
Oh my goodness! Look at where we are here.
Where we've ended up.
I think we made the right decision, guys.
Yeah. We'll just do slow circles around this pond.
Just remember not to harass these fish, and we'll be fine.
That could be a great episode title. Don't harass the fish with David Modigliani.
Yeah.
For now, okay, we'll keep going. We'll keep.
I like the one about the Modigliani.
Speaks volumes.
It often does.
Okay, so David,
Yes.
you and I have known each other since graduate school.
Yes.
You were in the Michener program.
Yes.
I was in the RTF program.
Yes.
And I knew you as a playwright.
Yes.
And you came over, and I remember you took a film class. I think it was an editing class, if
Yes.
I remember right.
Yes. Yes.
And when we met, you were telling me that you were really interested in making a documentary that eventually became Crawford,
Yes,
I think.
yeah.
Or actually, no, you know what? Before that,
Oh,
you
it's
and
about
I
the
worked
community
together
center.
on the community center
Yep,
documentary.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
yes,
And I think, did I edit that?
I think you did a little. He's reaching deep.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
in the
Check the IMDb, folks.
I think you did a little polish, like an online. I think I had no idea how to do we had shot on like mini DV, and we had to online the whole thing. And I remember you switching a shot. I think you spotted an opportunity to add value in like a brief time that you had doing the online and so you're like, what if we put this here? And I was like, oh, that's much better. And so
Okay.
yes. I
This
think
was
you at least did.
2004, so
Yes.
it's
Yeah, I moved here in 04. I want to say that was 2005.
2005.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was doing playwriting and poetry at the Michener Center for Writers, like Keith Moore. Didn't go to film school, more of a writing background.
Well, I'm excited to talk about that because I don't have a lot of like pangs of regret of not going to film school.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to be in a writing program, I was in an undergrad writing program here at UT in the English department, which is a creative writing short story workshop for 3 semesters. And it was honestly changed the way that I approach storytelling. For our viewers, what is the Michener program?
The Michener program is a part of UT Austin. It's an MFA writing program. They take, I think, 12 writers a year across 4 primary focuses: playwriting, poetry, screenwriting, and fiction. And what makes it different from a lot of other writing programs in the country is that instead of 2 years, it's 3 years, because they ask you to not just do a thesis in your primary genre that you're accepted for, but also to then choose a secondary genre and also do a thesis in that.
That's super cool.
So that's where the filmmaking.
That's
part
what
came
opened the
into.
door for me, because I came as a playwright. My secondary genre was poetry to start. But after about the first year that I was there, we went out to the town of Crawford, Texas, where George W. Bush had sort of called it his home, this 700-person one-stoplight town. And I thought I was going to write a play about it. And I was interested in the sort of like, oh, we'll interview these people and we'll use parts of those interviews. And then I even started thinking maybe it'll be multimedia. So I convinced a friend to come out and shoot some stuff. And the whole time it was just so clear. I was this kid from Boston, and I had these like very stereotypical preconceived notions of what small town Texas might be like. And these folks were just incredible, 3-dimensional, colorful storytellers.
Right.
And it was so obvious that like fictionalizing or abstracting from them in any way would be a total disservice. And it was like, oh, this wants to be a film.
Right.
So then I was like, well, how do I do that? So I switched my secondary genre from poetry to screenwriting so that I could take an editing class with Ann Lewis and Paul Steckler's like doc production class, and they let me come in with some of the film students. So I only took 2 film classes, but those 2 classes, learning how to edit, then allowed me to edit that footage together,
Right.
cut together a little teaser, and then we were kind of off and running on what eventually became my first feature doc.
Which is the time that we met.
Yeah.
Right when Crawford came out.
Yeah,
What-
08, I want to say.
You had played South by.
Okay, and Eyes of Me.
Was the very next year.
Okay.
And I saw you as like, this guy had just done it. you were having a great time at the festival. I was like stressed out and trying to figure it out.
Your edit,
First
yeah.
ever festival appearance with a feature. And I remember just seeing you, like everywhere I looked, you were having a great time. It was like you were riding that kind of Crawford wave.
It was
and
a great feeling.
I thought that film like made such a great statement about like what.
Thank you for the applause for Crawford. Thank you so much. Glad you guys have seen it. It's almost 20 years old now, so I'm glad it's still out there.
It's such like an interesting way to make a comment on a political moment with a film that looks at a community that was like so deeply impacted by that political moment in a really non-traditional way. But when you think about it, like every president and every senator and every governor has this backstory, this like other place, this second home, you know, like I always love going out to the LBJ ranch.
Yep, the origin story.
And W, you know, kind of glommed onto this like all hat and no cattle kind of like story in this small town of Crawford, where very real Texans lived.
Yes.
What did you learn from making that film?
I learned a lot. I learned how to make a film. It was in a way like the film school for me, just learning by doing. I was interested in ways to capture a political moment through intimate personal stories, and that like through the lens of these folks and these characters, if you cared about them and what was going on in their lives, then their view of the Bush era as his neighbor might illuminate some of the like bigger narratives and bigger moments, such as the war in Iraq, and then Cindy Sheehan showed up, and I heard you recently talking about not knowing the third act, you know, and that was, I think, the case in part for us was like that something interesting is happening here. Like this guy couldn't run for president from the governor's mansion, bought a home 6 months before he announced his candidacy, won the presidency, turned it into the Western White House. What do these people think about this place and the internal dynamics of that town as they became thrust onto the world stage? When Cindy Sheehan, we had already been shooting for a year, and this woman who had lost her son in Iraq came to basically want to talk to W, and her idea was like, I'm just going to show up at his ranch at the fence and hope he comes to explain to me why did my son die in Iraq.
Right.
And then people started joining her, and then the counter protesters came, and in August of 2005 there was one day there were 20,000 people in this 700 person town, and they had become like ground zero for this whole national conversation. And all of our characters that we'd been following, there they were, and they were in the midst of it. So it was also a lesson, I think, in like pointing your nose about something you're curious about. There's something here, let's start, you know, digging into it, developing relationships, filming, and then that gave us a real sort of third act, you know, element that we could not have predicted going in.
I want to
stroll?
Yeah, I want to walk across this little rock bridge here.
Okay.
But I want to say it's not exactly if you build it, they will come, because you didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
But it was like, if you show up, you will find story.
Yeah. And a lot of those characters' lives were impacted during that period and transformed in ways that we could not have necessarily predicted. I think we shot for about 2.5 years and then made the film. And
so how was that similar, or was it similar at all, to playwriting for you?
it's a good question.
Yeah.
I think the editing process always feels to me similar to writing in some way, that you've got X numbers of hours of footage, you could tell this story, you could tell 20 different stories, out of what you got on your hard drives. And the question is, what is exactly the story you're telling? How is the footage that you have going to support that? And constructing and building the world and building that narrative. This sort of dramaturgical exercise felt similar to playwriting.
When you're talking about that, like editing as a playwright, editing as a screenwriter, editing as a poet, the process is subtractive, right? But when you're making Verite doc, you start with an additive process, right? You're just collecting. You're spotting people, you're spotting characters, you're shooting moments. How did your experience up till Crawford inform that part, identifying character, identifying potential story?
Part of it, I think, when I was in college, I was in an improv comedy group. And I hadn't thought about this so much until recently, but I do think that in some ways directing a doc is an exercise in improv.
That's right.
In which only one side of it, depending on your filmmaking style, but for me, for largely one side of it's being filmed.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it, because the yes and
Yeah.
is so foundational to improv.
Exactly.
Is exactly the attitude you need to take as a doctor.
Exact. I think documentary filmmaking is a medium entirely built around trust. Winning over the trust of your subjects such that they can ideally, be fully themselves, open themselves up to their moments being captured on camera, such that you're passing that feeling of trust onto an audience who then can experience it as well. And I feel like improv is largely in that way of co-creating, co-constructing. So I think like my ability to, and the sort of, I would call it maybe like spontaneous dramaturgy
Right.
of improv, right? Where you're like figuring out what the scene is as it's happening, is also similar to when something's unfolding in doc production and you're like, well, we think it's kind of gonna fill this, but this actually seems to be about this other thing. And so sort of recognizing what the conflict or the heart or the joke or the joy of a scene is as it's unfolding, and then trying to like work to further heighten that, bring it out, capture it.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the improv instincts fed into that.
I love that. What was the name of your improv troupe?
It was the Immediate Gratification Players. And then when I first came to Austin, we
Modernistic.
had a group called the Knuckleball Now.
Baseball reference.
And it was like the knuckleball could go any moment at any time, and you trying to be present and all that. And that improv group is still around and has a show tonight.
Is that right?
Really?
Yes.
Are you jumping in? Are
I
you?
try to go straight from Home Slice, and haven't done improv in a very long time, but they were kind to invite me
What a
back.
big weekend.
I know, it's a lot in 36 hours. Doc walks, Home Slice.
I mean, I just
knuckleball
called
now.
quits after doc walks, but
We're peaking early.
That's right.
that's the episode. No, that's not fair. Peak early with David Modigliani.
Peacocking
Oh,
early.
now that.
Hey, now.
Well,
We gotta see if we find it.
yeah, that's right. This park is famous for its peacocks. We have yet to encounter any
we're-
peafowl.
Hunting.
So, wrapping up the Michener of things.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm jealous when I think about the idea of spending 3 years
Yes.
focus on writing. Where
Let me
it's,
assure you that at age 24, I basically was no more able to truly get the most out of it than you were at age 21.
Gotcha.
And I do think about, gosh, what a privilege to be able to have all that time to write when I spent so much of it sort of fretting about like how to use the time.
Wow, we gotta get a
Get a
stop
shot
for a
of
second. Get
how
a
the other
shot
half
of
lives
this
over here.
I was more looking at this tree.
Okay.
Look at this wild tree growing down over the water. That
Just
is
an incredible live oak in action.
man, that is gorgeous.
Should go sit out on a limb there.
So, out on a limb with David Modigliani.
Out on a limb with David
on a limb.
Modigliani.
We got a beautiful live oak across the street from, I'm guessing, an $8.5 million home. I don't know, maybe 6.5.
I would maybe go a little higher.
Oh, okay.
I bet that's maybe in the 10s.
Ben's got an offer to make. That's a beautiful cypress, bellied up
It
to
really is.
the pool there,
Yeah.
and a nice little offshoot of Lake Austin, which is right out here.
Houses documentary filmmakers will never live in. That's right. Doc walks. Could be a whole.
It really could be the home store.
Yeah.
You
We
know,
basically all inadvertently took a vow of poverty, I think.
well, it's funny about vows that we've taken, and back to this writing program.
Yeah.
Somewhere between my sophomore and junior year, I was interning for the Muppets up in New York, and I had just gotten into this creative short story writing program in the English department.
Cool.
And I was a double major, RTF, but getting into this writing program, I felt like I had a choice to make. If I stayed RTF and I did this writing program, college is going to take me 5 years, and I, especially that summer in New York, told me I was ready to be out. And so I had to decide, do this writing program or stick with RTF production, which would require spending some money I didn't have access to, keep me in a program that I had always wanted to be in, but hadn't really delivered for me yet in the 2 years I'd been doing it. And a grip on the Muppet program that I was working on gave me this little piece of advice. He said, if you have the opportunity to write and somebody has to read your writing and has to give you feedback, that is the most valuable thing you could get at this point in your life, because as soon as you are out of this program, nobody will want to read your writing. And if they are willing to read your writing, they certainly won't give you honest feedback.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And so if you have this chance to get honest feedback, you're being prompted to write and somebody will respond to it, you need to take that. And I think it's one of the most impactful pieces of advice I ever got, but I didn't follow it to its next level, which is where you are. And I appreciate you saying like you didn't feel like you were as mature enough, but do you agree with that advice?
Yes, I do think that. I do think being in a cohort of just sort of like-minded folks that are working and reading each other's work and being forced to not only read other people's work, but provide constructive feedback, I think is always useful. Of like, how do I take this story on its own terms and give feedback or notes that are constructive, not like how would I rewrite this, but what's the style that this person's going for. And so I think both receiving and giving, having to read and give feedback was constructive around story, around style, around perspective, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, like, I can only imagine like the conversations sort of happening in your mind, and maybe even with your parents or your close friends, like you're a playwright who goes into poetry, who then goes into documentary and filmmaking.
Who does baseball themed improv on the side.
I was gonna say, are your parents like, are you actively trying not to get a job? Is that are you just making yourself like the most unemployable person? Like, were you sort of thinking at all around any of that? Like, what is this gonna add up to? Or were you more sort of in this great position where you were like, I know these are all gonna come together at some point?
It's a good question. I think in part, the security that I had the program, the Michener Center program, and I knew I had those couple of years where I had to do these writing things, but then once we started shooting the Crawford thing and I kind of became most passionate about that, at least I knew I had like this window of time that I could try to knock that out. And honestly, I think after editing together the first sort of sizzle reel from the Crawford footage, I saw that it was getting traction and response, and that I was actually able to raise money to hire folks because I didn't know how to shoot, and I was able to bring some crews out there and keep doing stuff. So I was getting at least some degree of like market feedback from sort of politicos in Austin and film folks like, hey, this is an interesting subject, this is a film we'd like to see. And I think that gave me, whether true or not, like the sense of like, okay, like there could be success in this, there could be a living in this. Right. We made the film, it got into South by, we screened it at the Paramount 3 times, like going from shooting on mini DV and having only ever seen the thing in our little editing suite, and then walking in for the tech check the day of the premiere and seeing it on the screen at the Paramount. I will never forget that moment. So it was initial feedback, and we sold that film to Hulu just at the time that it was launching, which was really interesting around like digital distribution taking off. So just in that first year, I think I was fortunate to get the sense of like, I might be on, if not the right path, like a path sort of like this, you know, like this kind of looking path, like, you know.
Let's get back to this kind of looking path.
Okay,
so you made Crawford on the heels of all these decisions between poetry, improv, playwriting, and then you were out. You had to confront reality, and you were a documentary filmmaker.
Yes.
What did that mean to you, and what were your steps after,
Well, part of how to sort of continue getting reps and making work was kind of identifying, this was like 2009, 2010, I guess you would call it cause marketing, sort of like companies recognizing that telling stories about the positive work that they were doing or their partnerships with nonprofits would be valuable to their brands. And I started making work for hire, basically, short form docs, brand supported content in the very early days of that. And had a couple partners, had an agency, and the benefit of that was, in addition to income, was because I really had only made one film project, which was this feature doc, the opportunity just to get reps of taking these shorter 3-minute, 5-minute, pieces and going soup to nuts on them a bunch of times was really useful to me in terms of learning, making stuff, finishing stuff. I also learned a lot through the process of working with companies or nonprofits where you've got folks that may not be the most creative minded, and you're trying to teach them an objective process for an inherently subjective endeavor. And so just putting together processes like, okay, you're going to get feedback at the rough cut, fine cut, and final cut stage, and you're going to provide that feedback in writing, and then we're going to discuss it together, and then we're going to
horrible.
shepherding groups of like stakeholders, for lack of a nicer word. It kind of all culminated. The last big project was for Wounded Warrior Project, which is a veterans nonprofit. We did a 10-part series. And they were in for that for their 10th anniversary, 10 short films, each about a different young veteran coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan. And we cut the trailer together and then pitched it to MSNBC, who said, we will make a TV show out of this if you make 12 instead of 10.
Wow.
So we went back to Wounded Warrior Project. They said yes. And once a month, they would do show the film and then have a discussion in the second half of the hour that was led by a congressman who was who was a veteran, I think, at the time.
Again, the politics and documentary are sort of coming together for you here.
And that was the sweetest spot where Wounded Warrior Project really took our lead that, hey, the least amount of branding that is in this as possible, the more likely it will actually reach a mainstream audience or be appealing to a distributor that will just see this as quality content that they didn't have to pay for. And then since then, I've been fortunate to be working independently on films and projects, but I do think that period was helpful just of as I say, just getting reps.
Absolutely.
Learning stuff.
Yeah. And
Well,
so
building confidence is almost impossible to do without an outside guide of some kind, right? Like somebody setting boundaries and somebody kind of creating, either laying a path or telling you what not to include, where to step out of it.
And so then your most recent project that I'm aware of is Pack One Bag, which is a documentary
film,
podcast.
Yes.
I'm so curious to talk to you about that because you are our first guest who has made a podcast.
Yeah, we're all fellow podcasters. Thanks for joining me in the podcast.
Well, it's very.
We keep waiting for Stanley Tucci to show up, but it hasn't happened yet.
I know from listening to it that it's very different than what we're doing, but tell our audience about Pack One Bag.
My grandfather happens to have won the Nobel Prize in economics. I was always a lot more.
Whose grandfather has it?
No big deal. Come on, move it along, move it along.
I was always a lot more fascinated by the love story that made it possible. He was this 19-year-old Jewish kid growing up in Rome when Mussolini passed the racial laws against Jews. And he sort of was on the fence, didn't know what to do. His own mother was a fascist and thought everything would be fine. Wow. And he was so lucky to have fallen in love with this outspoken girl from Bologna who saw things a lot more clearly and whose parents had been putting together a plan to flee the country. And I knew that they had ultimately escaped Italy through Paris and onto the last boat out of mainland Europe before the war broke out. And I'd always been interested in that story. And I'd always thought that one day I'm gonna sit my grandparents down and film them telling this whole story, because they were great characters and they reminded me of the couples in When Harry Met Sally that are being interviewed by their love story.
Right.
And I was like, one day I'm gonna do this. And I procrastinated and I put it off and they died. And I never had those tapes that I sort of told myself I was gonna make. But when they died, they left behind this kind of trove for the grandchildren, which was their love letters from that period. I had them, and they'd sort of been a little bit of a source of guilt and sorrow that I hadn't done more. But during COVID, some people were making banana bread. We were all doing stuff, getting around to that thing that you weren't. And I was like, okay. And I took out these love letters and started diving in. And I expected this sort of faded, black and white mementos of a time gone by. And instead, their discussion of rising fascism, what do we do, all felt very fresh. Right. This was even in 2020 to me. And I thought, man, maybe their story has some answers for how I'm thinking about my own current moment.
Yeah.
And so from there, I went back to my dad's house and started asking him questions. And he was like, well, let's go down in the basement. We have these 19 boxes of their documents, some of which he had never opened. Started opening those up. And then we're finding letters from Mussolini to my grandmother's father. And I started man, this story is much bigger than I thought.
Right.
And so we went back to Italy, dove into the archives, reconnected with family there, and ultimately told this story about essentially the love story of my grandparents fleeing fascist Italy and the story of the brother that he left behind during the Nazi occupation. Now, why audio though? Is
Yeah.
your question. Like, okay, but that could, and to me it was basically like, we didn't have the assets. My grandparents were no longer with us. We had photos, we had stuff, and you could have made a doc that would be, let's say, Ken Burnsy in nature, which, no disrespect, but just is not as much my cup of tea. And I was a huge consumer. I listened to audio all the time, listened to podcasts, investigative audio, love sound design, always loved the sound design part of even doc filmmaking, which I think is hugely underrated, which we can talk about. And I thought, man, maybe telling this through audio, you could actually have a listener feel more immersed and make this experience they went through feel more immediate than like a kind of black and white photo doc that could make it feel like at a safe remove. And so leaned into the audio component of that. And even like some of the, it's funny, we're connecting dots myself here on Doc Walks, but the little bit of the improv and performance aspect of it. Because I had made that, we made this film Running with Beto about Beto O'Rouke's campaign for Senate. We made these, that I was never on camera involved, at all. Like we said before, 2-person scene, but you're only filming one side of it. But in this case, for audio, as you guys know, you're much more involved. And to be the host of a personal narrative, investigative podcast, it's much more personal and much more involved. And so there is a performative element of it.
Well, and literally you perform because you are playing the character
of my grandparents.
Of your grandparents, your grandmother and your grandfather.
I do my grandparents' voices because I always remembered how they spoke and sounded to me. And I wound up working with a production company of more audio experts because this was my first rodeo.
Right.
And I was like, no. So it was like my grandfather, would say, Franco, stop it. Stop bothering me. Serena, what's the problem here? It's not. And I was like, they sounded like that. And then they're like, well, you should do that. And I was like, no. Like, we should get actors.
We'll figure out how to do that.
And it kept coming back. And they were really... They in general push me to like, you gotta be more personal. You are the vehicle, especially in audio, of like how the audience is gonna relate to the story. And also your recollection of your grandparents, sure, it's like imperfect, but it feels authentic. Like it feels like we feel your real love for your grandparents, and therefore it's better than us doing it with actors or whatever else. So they like really nudged me off the cliff.
And it is a personal journey film because you set it up as, this is me, this is why I'm doing this, come along with me. And then you're the surrogate. You're the one who leads us through the story, even though it becomes about your grandparents.
Yeah. And so that we sort of leaned into the creative storytelling aspect of it. And so in addition to normal interview tape of like my grandfather's niece and nephew that were little children during the war in Rome, and we wound up interviewing the Prime Minister of Italy who had been a former student of my grandfather's, and all real interviews, we also have what we basically called invented archival. And that was me doing my grandparents, and then ultimately my grandmother's father was known as the king of the books and was this guy that had this big book distribution business, and he was the one that really got them out of Dodge and had both the resources and the information to kind of, and a plan to get out of Italy. And I had always thought that he was sort of like, when I heard about him, I pictured him as Stanley Tucci in my mind.
Oh, really?
And so then I had been fortunate to be in touch with Tucci on an earlier thing, and we were leaning into this, and it was like, well, what if we just we had invented archival footage with Tucci as my great-grandfather? And so we have these, so we interview him as my great-grandfather, and we show all that to the listener. We're not like trying to pull it off as though it's something other than what it is.
Right.
It's all an open hand, trust and building the trust and teaching the rules of the thing as we go. But so it ultimately blends together normal doc story convention stuff with a little bit more of this like imagined, invented stuff.
Right. I mean, what I want to know is like, how much fiction is in this nonfiction? And do you consider it a straight documentary, or do you consider it a hybrid, or?
That's a great question. We were trying as close as possible to tell the true story as best as I came to understand it. And so with my grandparents, like the dialogue that's from my grandparents and as though I'm interviewing them, that's all based on my grandmother wrote a sort of memoir, my grandfather had an autobiography, we had all these love letters, so it's all informed by their facts and the memories that they had shared. And same like with my great-grandfather, based on his letters, what we know about his life. So I think the term at one point was like new historicism. I mean, it's like the specific turns of phrase in conversation that is invented.
Right.
The underlying like facts and perspectives are all true, and the story fundamentally is true. So I would call it using some creative storytelling. I would call it creative nonfiction.
Creative
That's what I
nonfiction.
would call it.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's an idiom in place for that, right? There's a language and a grammar in creative nonfiction, especially with historical stories in books.
Yes.
But filmed,
Should we kind of tuck
Yeah.
into a
Oh, that
corner
looks
over
good.
here, maybe?
in filmed documentary, they like to use the word hybrid, but I always find that word to be a little off-putting because I
Yeah.
never really know what it means,
Yeah,
and
agreed.
it's hard to see like the edges of what's real and what's not unless it's made clear. I
Yes.
think in best cases it is, but you're working in like a new old medium, right? Because it's like, on the sense, you're making a podcast, but you're also kind of making like a radio drama.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like-
yes.
But we're about the same age, all three of us. Like, we didn't grow up in the days of radio drama, so as much as we could say it's like a radio drama, we don't really have that experience either.
Right.
So was that freeing for you to work in a format that like the rules were not in place?
I really enjoyed working in audio, and there was both the freedom of the creative nonfiction element of like, boy, I really wish my grandfather like had said it this way, and it's like, oh well, I'm doing his voice, I can just fucking say it that way. We have all spent so much time cutting together verite scenes, doc sequences, and you're thinking, do I have the visuals that can match the timing that I would like this to do? And the fact that you don't have to worry about anyone's lip flap, you don't have to worry about anyone's faces, and you can make these moments and timing and music and sound design all happen. The marionetting of timing and feeling is much more wide open to you. And that was super exciting, that you could really have the moments happen in the sequence and in the timing and the way that you want, unconstrained by the visuals that might be there. And the more that you did that, I really like, it's creative nonfiction. It's also, I think, investigative podcasts, audio in any way, is a guided meditation of sorts. Like the folks that are listening to this and not watching very wonderful camera work are perhaps hearing the sound of the breeze, the people in the background, and they're building a world in their mind. And that experience, I think, is a lot more like reading a book where you're constructing via the instructions, basically, like the world in your brain that you're picturing, imagining. And sound design, of course, just heightens that enormously. And so leaning into all that of just thinking like, how can we best help the listener build this world as realistically, intensively, emotionally like as possible through the sound design was a super fun thing where the visual is totally absent.
Right.
But process-wise,
Yeah.
you're still going. Like I remember the scene where you and Willa fly to Italy, and then you go and you meet the prime minister. Like you're physically going to these places and interviewing these people, much like you would making a documentary.
Totally.
The only difference being that you don't have a camera, you have a mic and headphones.
Yes.
Was the process similar in that way? for
Yes, yes, the process for sure of doing interviews, of visiting locations, and even of sort of scenes, some scenes kind of unfolding in real time. We've, recorded Rosh Hashanah dinner with my Italian Jewish family in Rome, which was so loud and cacophonous that like there was no chance it was gonna make it, no matter how good our audio work was. But the research aspect of it, I would say, was different in that like we went into the archives, we had all these documents. I don't know if it's Mr. Brody-esque exactly, but just like there was a lot of like text and historical research to understand, to then also simplify for an audience and explain. So it was less like, in comparison, for example, to like, okay, Beto's on the road for a year, we're following him and his family and these characters, and we're mostly just reactive to what is unfolding in real time. There was a reconstructive element to this because it was historical that felt very different.
I see.
And then thinking about how to use these letters and these moments to build scenes and bring to life some of those moments. So there were the real-time verite, we're on the ground, shit's unfolding. But there was also moments that were fully reconstructive that required kind of the research and then the sort of scene building through sound design.
Well, and the way you describe that and the way that it comes across, right, is not that different than if you were writing a play about this, or if you were writing it based on a true story, fictionalization. And so it's exciting to me because it feels like you got an opportunity, or you created an opportunity to walk new territory, but pick and choose like the best elements from your playwriting, your
Yes.
improv, your documentary. You said back there a couple moments ago, connecting dots.
Yes.
You know, like this
Yes.
feels like you had a chance to connect every dot.
Yes, that is really true, and you're totally right about the playwriting component of it. And at a certain point, I realized, like, oh, I'm writing dialogue for Stanley Tucci. Like, here we go. But I'm just hearing his voice and my grandfathers and great-grandfathers, and it was all came very naturally. But it definitely was, and working in an episodic nature, which was new to me.
Right.
That we had 10 episodes, and the narrative airplane's not just doing one flight. We got to do 10 puddle jumps, and they all are going to be additive and cliffhangers, and thinking in that way was super dramaturgical and playwrighty, I think, in nature, screenwrighty for sure. I feel very grateful. The idea that like I sort of drew on every tool that I could to also for the first time tell a personal story, which I had never made anything personal to me in any way. And so it was like, okay, it's my family story. It feels relevant to this moment. And I got to try to, or created the opportunity, you're generous to say it's true. We tried to figure out what's the best way to do it and to use any tool that I had that I thought would make this land and be most compelling.
There's one tool that you did not include that I have been enraptured by on this entire walk. You are the greatest hand speaker I have ever.
Italian, I'm getting
I mean, look, I'm half Italian. I like a little hand use, but like maybe it's these big long arms, but like you're so demonstrative with the gesticulations.
Italian and Jewish together.
There you go. That's what it is, right?
There's a lot of personality.
And so if you're listening on Spotify, you might consider jumping over to YouTube just for, he used the term marionetting. And I would say like, I would not be surprised if like your next thing is at the Modigliani Marionette Theater with just these two big arms and puppets of Stanley Tucci and Nana and
I love well, and that transitions nicely into we skipped over your documentary about Beto.
Sure.
That stuck it in there a few times.
That was on HBO that you did previous to the podcast, right? And that for a documentarian, like making an indie doc and selling it to HBO is often like the pinnacle. Like that's about as like good as it gets,
It's
right?
exciting.
And so then for you to go and make an audio only podcast is very personal, is really interesting. I'm curious, it's like a two-part question about what you're doing next and then how you're thinking about our industry evolving, right? Because
as you evolve.
As you evolve, because
into marionetting.
Well, and it's so interesting to go like from basically a big success with the sale to HBO to then go into a podcast. And in a way, like your trajectory sort of rhymes with or matches the like direction of the industry in a way where everybody's listening to things on their phone and watching things very personally, or going to the theaters, which projects aren't getting financed in the same way.
Take one more lap around this pond while we talk.
So I'm wondering where what you're working on now and where your head is at in terms of like how to tell nonfiction stories in this current climate.
I will say, it's a great question. I'll say first, it is true that the Beto ride, the filmmaking itself and getting to travel Texas to all of these places I had never been before and selling the film, I had never had the experience of selling a film before the festival.
Oh, wow.
Finding distribution before the festival. And we did that. And I will never forget my mom and my sister. They had been, Keith, you're remembering like, South by and Crawford premiering there. And my mom and my sister, I had enlisted them in passing out flyers for the screenings and everything. And they showed up.
Ready to work.
And they showed up at South by, which is where we premiered the Beto doc, but we had already sold it to HBO. So my mom, we're sitting down getting a coffee. They just get into town, and my mom's like, "So where's like the cards and the flyers?" And my sister points across the street, and there was a bus that HBO had put an ad on the side of. And my sister's like, "Mom, I think they got it taken care of." And it was just a wildly different experience. And it was.
I just want to pause that moment.
I was like, this will never happen again.
I just want to pause that moment. That moment of sitting there with your mom and your sister and the bus billboard going by Marcello's children are going to make the most incredible hologram podcast telling the Modigliani story. And that moment is going to, and that bus is going to flash in front of all of our eyes.
Yes.
I've never had a moment like that. You know, I don't know if you've ever had a moment. Well, you probably have had a moment like that.
I've had billboards all over. Yeah, that's been pretty cool to see.
Super
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really, that's the moment where you're like, oh, I've made it in some way. But the funny, my version of that story is that I was having a brunch with my Hulu exec the day that our show came out.
Yeah.
And he was telling me how successful it was and how looks like we're going to go to season 2 and he should gear up.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later,
Totally.
Disney reorgs, fires half their team, and our show didn't get picked back up. So with the extreme highs come extreme lows.
And I think I was very grateful that that particular project arrived at, in my life, I was like 37, 38 when we started it, that I knew, first of all, in the making of it and then the distribution of it, that it was something very special was happening, and I was old enough to appreciate and to just try to be present and like enjoy the ride. Whereas if that had happened 10 years prior, I would have been like, oh, this is just how it is. Like you just, it's cool. And then you do this and then that, and like I would have been so just focused on what was unfolding. But I was like, knew like we've caught a wave here. It's a beautiful ride that we're on. And I was able to some degree more than usual to like to be present and to know that like a few months later, this thing will be out and we're on to the next and who cares?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
if anyone could teach you that lesson, it's Beto O'Rouke.
Exactly. Anyway, so, but to your question, from there to audio, I really do believe that for me, if I find a story that I'm start to get passionate about telling, then the question is like, what is the best way to tell it? And the medium is part of the answer to that. It has been super growth moment to get to do the podcast because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Right.
And it felt good, scary, but good to be like pretty uncomfortable here in middle age and trying some new shit. And, you know, I am by no means a master documentary filmmaker, but I had a decent sense of like how one might go about making a feature doc and like felt relatively competent at that. So to do something that was totally different in a different medium and to find an audience and some success in that, I think feels like empowering, even at the same time that our general industry feels a little depressing when we think about funding and distribution and where things are going. I at least feel empowered of like that trying new mediums or new ways that is still ultimately documentary storytelling or nonfiction storytelling.
Right.
And what has been totally different versus filmmaking is with a film, you know, you like there's a frictionlessness. It's frictionless, the audio, just in terms of like how the thing can fly around the world. Like, so when we make a film and you're like, come to this screening or it's on this streaming service, you know, like, do you have this streaming service or it's going to be on at this time, and trying to get people to go and see the thing. And audio, because of the RSS feed, because it is can be on all the platforms around the world, and that truly someone can just text it to, like, they like it, they text it. There's a word of mouth that even when someone sees a great doc and you're like, it's Keith, I want you to watch my friend Ben's film. It's on Roku.
Send me a link.
It's on Hulu thing, and here's the Vimeo, and can you come to this screening and sit down? Exactly. As opposed to
someone gets me the link, but I can't get it onto my TV, and I don't want to watch it on my phone.
As opposed to with audio, it's like, just check this out while you're doing the dishes, you know, or while you're like driving to, you know, or going shopping for food or whatever. And so the frictionlessness of the distribution nature of audio, as well as the consumption nature of it, I found that I have gotten so much more feedback from the audio. In part, it's different that there's not the in-person vibe of like a Q&A at a screening. We've done a few events, but the online, like as far as the reviews, like on Apple Podcasts, and just like how people are responding about their own, what it made them think about their own story or this political moment or whatever it is, I've gotten much more feedback from this project than any other. And I've found that it has found an audience. We had downloads in 182 countries, and and the data also is crazy rich. Like with a film, you're like, okay, it's on HBO and it was amazing, but it's like, okay, some people watched it, but like most platforms, as you guys know, they're not really sharing a lot in the weeds with you, and in some cases may not have it.
Right.
Whereas with audio, you can see where, like down to what platform it was listened to, you know, at what time and how far into the episode and all this stuff. And so there was a richness to that data and sense of where the thing actually went that felt like, you know, exciting.
Incredible.
At the same time, I'm rambling here, and I'm really gesticulating now. I don't know that high quality, investigative, creative storytelling podcast is necessarily like any more freaking sustainable than doc filmmaking, because was this moment in like when we started this project, when like Spotify was acquiring narrative podcasts for, you know, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and I was like, oh, this seems great, let's go for that. I could see how that could go. And it was a moment for them where they're acquiring these things because then they see the derivative rights in them. They want to be part of the IP play and
narrative film,
and all
And
that.
you give up 50% of that, right, by making the deal.
Something like that. And we wound up making ours independently, and we could talk about that and why. But that moment really largely seems to have passed. And that limited series in particular, as opposed to always on series like Doc Walks, where production costs are low and where you can build an audience because it's going on every week or so for a long time. A limited series, you've just got those 10 episodes, and so the ad inventory that's there is fairly limited. And so for these distribution entities, they seem that we're kind of wildly spending for a while. That wave seems to have passed. We made this independently and raised money just like we would for a normal doc project, and that allowed us to hold on to the IP, which answers in part the question about what's next, which is that we are going to make the Italian language version of this podcast with this Italian company called Cora Media that wants to do it.
Talk about hands.
Are you going to be performing?
I'm going to be
in Italian?
co-hosting. We're working with them now. It's going to be conceived a little differently because my accent in Italian would be tiring for the whole jam, like my English, American accent.
Right.
So there'll be a kind of co-host. It's almost like maybe a little bit like there's an Italian journalist who'd be like, I met this American that came back to uncover his family story. So I become more of like tape and a subject.
Okay.
And
so you're not
this
boning up
guy-
on Duolingo and like
Yeah,
carrying
I'm
them.
doing some of that because I'm gonna have to answer his questions in Italian and do that. But so we're doing that, and then I have been working with Tucci and his production company to try to adapt this for the screen, and we've been looking at both at limited series television or at a single narrative feature that would tell part of the story, and that is a much slower roll. And I hanker for the doc process where you can roll the snowball. I see why people talk about development hell and like just like how much slower that process is and how much less agency you have than doc making. But that's part of where we're headed next.
Gotcha. I want to wrap up
Yes.
our time in the park here. I stopped us here so that we could pay a little homage to this beautiful carved peacock, because it's the only fucking peacock we saw.
The only peacock we found is in stone.
Yeah, just like the stone peacock. Exactly, the stone peacock and us on this beautiful Saturday morning.
Which might be the name of the episode.
Could be.
The stone
There's a lot of good. I think it's connecting the dots, but maybe it's the stone peacock.
I like
the
it.
stoned peacock.
Connecting the dots makes the most sense, I think, based on what we've been talking about. But here,
Hey, this has been like creative therapy for me. You guys really helped me
That's-
put
you know
some
what?
pieces together.
That's the great thing about that is our copay is low.
You take Blue Cross Blue Shield?
I take it. I don't know what to do with it, but I'll take it. I know that we like to end our episode with a lightning round. You told us that you listened to several episodes in prep of this, so you know what those questions are.
what questions are coming?
So we're going to hit you fast and hard and then get out clean, because I have to get back across town.
Happy birthday, Theo.
Yeah, and hit my son's birthday party. As a matter of fact, I'm on my way to pick up a cornhole set on the way home. And
I'm
so
not sure we can say that on the podcast. We might have to beat that
this
part.
is our world, and we can cornhole as we please.
Hey. And you think you're busy. This guy has to go do improv.
He's got pizza, he's got improv.
This has been a great start to the day. I really feel like I figured out who I am here on Doc Park, so now I'm much more prepared for the day.
That's gonna be a pull quote on the DVD box.
Yeah, I figured out who I am on Doc Walks.
Yeah.
So what was the first film that was like the gateway drug that made you feel like, you know what? I can make documentaries. So I want to spend my time thinking about how to do that.
That I made or watched?
Watched.
Watched. Don't Look Back, the D.A. Pennebaker.
So great.
It was an all-time favorite, and I didn't realize how much until later when we were making the Beto film. In a way, the idea of sort of like this truth teller on the road that went from an unknown to becoming a huge sensation, it sort of mirrored that arc. And I went back to that film and actually got to, in New York, my friend said, we were just doing a little feedback screening. He said, I'd like to bring someone. Do you trust me? And I said, yes. And D.A. Pennebaker was 91, I think, and came, and I got to meet him, and he watched a rough cut, and it was like a real special.
We need to get Chris Hedges on here. I did a panel with Penny and Chris. Sarah and I, my wife and I, did a panel with Penny and Chris, creative couples working together, and it was like,
great.
Blew my mind to be on a panel with them. And what was even wilder was there was only about 3 people in the audience. It was like a Sunday morning at the Montclair Film Festival, and so it became just like a roundtable conversation with the audience and Penny and Chris, and you know he passed shortly after you worked with him, I'm sure. Same time period.
I don't think so.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to bring the podcast down.
The Pope died.
Yeah, the death of the industry, the death of the Pope, fascist grandma. That can't bring it down, but don't kill D.A. Pennebaker.
Kill Penny, come on. Okay, all right. So, dream collaborator. If you could collaborate with anybody right now, living or dead, who would it be?
Do you know what just like popped into my mind? I don't know why, but it's like I know that we all really love and respect Richard Linklater, and I don't even know what I would collaborate with him on, but I just am so amazed by his storytelling and pushing the bound, and from Boyhood to the new Merrily We Roll project.
Have you seen Blue Moon or Nova?
No, I want to see both of those.
He is on top of his game.
Awesome.
It's on both of those movies are
I'm going to see Nouveau Vague on Wednesday if anybody wants to join me, like the end of the day screening.
So good.
Maybe that's more of an answer to just like whom do I most sort of admire, but I love the way that he's always trying new stuff, and that he's skirting his own independent voice and the market at the same time, and
that he stayed here and built up the scene,
and what he's done for AFS, which is getting to do rough cut screenings there for Crawford when I was just moved here, and all the things. And
we've all benefited, and we're all playing in his playground.
Yes, exactly.
He's the man.
Yeah.
What's the thing you can't stop thinking about right now?
Can't stop thinking about right now. The honest answer is my son, because it was my first time being away. Yeah, so it's like this morning waking up and being like, and then like I went back to sleep for 20 minutes, and it was just unbelievable. But I'm thinking about him a lot. I guess in a broader sense, it's hard not to be thinking, or I'm wrestling with how to metabolize our current political moment, and on the one hand to be reading these pieces and getting the sense of like, are we frogs in boiling water, and feeling like some sense of alarm about the intensity of the question of democracy in this country, and at the other hand walking with my friends through a beautiful Saturday morning stroll and everything's fine. And I think like that sense of deep concern and a sense of alarm while also life goes on apace is like, I think about that a lot, and like how to metabolize or reconcile those things like on a daily basis of just how do you integrate them.
We were just talking to somebody on a walk, I think last week. These things are such a blur. And we were talking about the political storytelling isn't about recognizing what's happening that moment. It's being able to kind of see what's going to happen in the next moment, because these things take so long to make that by the time they come out, like, yes, we're all frogs in a pot. And when you realize that, you get real frustrated and you look around and you're like, God, this moment, this world, this life right now, you're looking at this moment right now. Do you have any sense of what's coming next? Please tell us.
Well, it's funny because in some ways, the making of Pack One Bag, when that was 2020, and I had this feeling like these fascist, neo-fascist forces at work aren't going anywhere, and it took 4 years to make the project.
Right.
And in retrospect, we released it in July of 2024 before the election. And in retrospect, with a crystal ball, I actually would have waited until like this past spring, because I think that even more people would feel like, oh, I am interested in like, how do you know when to flee a country, and how do you confront fascism and all these things. So there was this, I had that sense of like, this story is gonna be relevant then. Where are we going now? I mean, I wish I had something insightful to say. I do believe that narrative matters, and attention matters, to your questions of, about our industry and format and form, but just finding stories and narratives that can break through, particularly when there is just so much political attention grabbing going on, feels urgent. But I don't have a strong sense of where exactly we're headed.
Well, that's okay. You know what?
And you know what? We didn't either on this doc walk.
Hey,
So-
that's right. Yeah.
People will tune in next week to get the answer of what's coming next from our next guest next time.
It'll be like, our walk today, down many various paths, retracing some steps,
Yeah.
ultimately ending in the shade in brotherhood and democracy.
And we did see a peacock.
There.
Right?
Yes,
Even though it wasn't the
was
one
a
we set out
Yes.
to see, we did see one,
Yes.
which is in some way kind of life
The
lesson.
third act brought a peacock, it just was stoned.
Well, thanks for doing this, man. This has been a treat.
It's a treat for me.
And happy birthday, Theo.
Happy birthday,
Appreciate y'all. I'm off to Theo's birthday party. We'll catch you next time.
On
Doc Walks.
Hey! Oh, when you do an Italian?
I'm Serena Modigliani. Thank you so very much for listening or watching on the YouTubes of Doc Walks.
And I'm Franco, and I just want to say we are very appreciative. Please rate and review the podcast because we really want to reach more listeners. Thank you so much.
Hey! Thank you so much.
That was.
That was David Modigliani.
I loved that episode. I thought that was hilarious. I talked with his hands, but also I like that we got lost. We tried to go down a trail that was too rocky. We turned around. There was like some kind of madcap.
I wanted more peacocks, and it's the only thing. My only complaint about the episode. I've nothing but positives about that episode, except next time I'm going to call ahead and order the peacocks.
Yeah. Oh, please do that. Yeah, more episodes, more peacocks.
More peacocks coming. And thank you to our sponsor, Peacock, from NBC Universal.
It just sounds as
Right? It
natural.
just
That
rolls
was a
right off the
perfect
tongue.
setup. But we do actually have a sponsor for this episode.
We've
our
been sponsored this whole
first
time.
ever, but the long time, which
This whole
is
time.
a concert venue. It's a baseball venue. It's where my wife and I got married.
It's where David and you play baseball together.
Where we play baseball on the Texas Playboys. My hat I'm wearing. You can rent it for commercials. My company, The Bear, is shot out there lots of times. So
Big shout out to Jack Sanders and the Long Time and all
Very
the folks
grateful.
that have supported this episode. If you're a new listener because the Long Time sent you here, thank you. Please stick around when we're not talking to baseball players. That'll be the true test. So this has been a great episode. David's podcast, Pack One Bag.
Pack One Bag is fantastic. For those of you who haven't heard it, please go listen to it. It's eerily apropos for the moment that we're living in. And David does a fantastic job playing all the different characters, which you get a piece of at the end of the episodes.
Not enough. I would take more. I want that guy to do my my outgoing phone message. So thanks again, David. Thank you guys for being here. Next time on Podwalks?
Podwalks? Oh boy, we need to cut on Doc Walks.
Yeah, we'll keep it rolling. They know what I meant. They're still here. Next time on Doc Walks, we're going to wrap things up for 2025. It's our Doc Walks year in review.
That's right.
Hopefully it's the first of many years in review, but this time we're going to focus on 2025.
That's right. And this is the end of our first year. We have made upwards of 35 episodes, and
that.
we're going to look back at them and talk about our
We're going to talk about some ups,
some downs,
some in the middle.
things we could do better.
But we're not going to do it alone. We are inviting longtime friend, longtime listener, and
First
full-time
caller.
filmmaker, all-around great human being, Sally O'Grady, is joining us
That's right.
for this year in review. She's got opinions, and she's going to share them. And she's also got a film that she's going to share. Sally's film, The Trouble I See, is coming to AFS Cinema on January 14th and coming to digital platforms all around America on January 16th.
Yeah, and Sally's a gem. She is just so full of good energy, and I'm just thrilled to get to know her better, talk to her on the podcast. She was there at the beginning when we started doing this. We went to Sundance.
And she's
we did
going
last
to
year.
last us all. So
Yes, she's the best. So this is going to be a great episode.
So stick around next time for a year in review. We hope you've been having a happy holiday season. We hope you're staying warm. We appreciate you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Keith Malin. I'm grateful. I'm grateful we get to do this, and thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you next year.
Dayton, cue the music. Doc Walks is produced, directed, edited by me, Keith Maitland, and him,
Ben Steinbauer.
and co-producer Dayton Thompson. We'll catch you on the trail.
Next time on Doc Walks.
One foot in front of the other.
Stop talking. Follow us at Doc Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.